go on here. Okay, so this is how this little predator works, all right? Here is, if we look at this from a scouting standpoint, none of these ovisacs of the adelgid are disturbed. They're nice and round, little pearls all over the place, okay? And so you see them here, they're real nice. Go to the next slide, okay? This is what it looks like when you have predators. The ovisacs get all torn up, and see how they're torn up? They're torn open. And at first we didn't know how to judge that. Was that a predator? But now using this ultraviolet light, we can show that predators have been in there because there's orange poop. So that really helped us a lot. And so this is one of the ways. It's just like us being out in the garden now. I can walk out in hemlocks and I can flip a limb over and I can tell you whether there's predators there or not. Okay. So here's this beetle. I got 55 of them over there. You don't need to know this is all, that's all entomology geek stuff for torturing students, okay? But this thing is just like less than 1/8 of an inch long, but it does nothing but feed on adelgids. It comes out right now after the adelgid's broken diapause. It's another one of these predators like CMAC that's way more specific than we ever thought that it was. Go to the next slide, okay? Oh, go back one, okay. This thing's native to the Pacific Northwest. It's host specific to Hemlock woolly adelgid. It eats other adelgids, but it doesn't reproduce on them. It's synchronized with the life cycle. Every one of these females, if you feed them correctly, right, has a really high egg production, 400 eggs, and it lays from January to May, okay? It lays one egg in an ovisac, and then it marks it. I've never found, in the field, I've never found more than one larva in an ovisac. That's how smart, I mean, these things are so smart, okay? They live at least a year, and they cause, in the areas where we've seen them, they cause about a 97% reduction in adelgid. So what happens is you have this patch dynamics going on all the time in Seattle. I'll come in there. This is the first of the season, so I have to go out and scout areas. In some areas where they were really abundant last year, they're not. And in other areas, they're up, okay? So go on ahead to the next one. This just shows that it's synchronized. Don't worry about that. All right, so here's what I was telling you guys is I dissected 1,200. We're working from data. You know, I'm from Missouri, so I like to say, show me the data. I do the science, but I'm doing the science for us, you know, so we get this out there. So 50% of the ovisacs had a Laricobius egg in it. 46% were visibly disturbed, and that's that thing now where we can prove that it's with ultraviolet. Each larva eats 200 to 250 eggs. So they eat tons. Up where we are, they've got to go through 10 ovisacs. So you'll get 100% predation if you have one egg in every 10 ovisacs, because that larva is going to hatch out and eat 20, 20, 20. Just keep going down the limb. Okay, so go on here. So here's what happens. The first thing I started doing was monitoring both eastern and western hemlocks in Seattle. In 2005, here's this hemlock, and it looked like somebody had flocked it. They just sprayed it. It was just white with adelgids, and this is where we had done that study. The very next year, the same time, this branch had 2 ovisacs on it. You can see there's one ovisac here, and there's another ovisac there. That starts the cycle over again. The beetle wiped out 97% of the adelgid, but now the adelgid starts building back up. This is too far dispersed for the beetles to lay eggs because it has to have ovisacs next to each other because it usually eats from one into the other. If they're separate like this, they won't lay eggs in there because they go, hey, larva's not going to make it. These females are brilliant, okay? So go on here. So what happened then was this got imported into Virginia Tech. I'm an alum of Virginia Tech. I started hanging out with those guys, and I got the 8th release of beetles out the door, and we put them in Hemlock Hill, okay? And so we've had studies going on this for a while. All right, so there were beetle releases made all up and down. One of the things that I've been doing recently is I've been working with the Forest Service to evaluate these other release sites, and it turns out that there's beetles in probably more than 50% of them, probably even higher than that, okay? So really, they're really doing well. Go on to the next. So the other thing that I did, because I was a former regulator, is I wrote the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service and got a letter of jurisdiction, no jurisdiction from them, which said that I could import this beetle. I was going, following the rules. Here's my official permit. And so they gave me this piece of paper, and then I hit the Pacific Northwest catching beetles. Here, look at this. I can catch beetles. Okay, so let's go on. David Mazel was a guy that I worked with. So here's the size of a beetle next to an adelgid. And these are about what the adelgids look like right now. If they have one cast skin, then they're a second instar. So they started out as first instar, cast that skin, and then puffed up wool. And so you see the size of the beetle, it's not that big, okay? So we put 300 beetles out at Hemlock Hill. That's all we could get. Yeah, go on to the next slide. There. All right, you guys, what I want to tell you now, here's the first 4 releases we made. I've made more than 30 releases. I've never stopped releasing this beetle up where we are. I've just been flinging them out. The story now is this beetle occurs all around the backside of Grandfather, all through here. This is Banner Elk, so you can stand up in McCrae Meadow and look out to Beech Mountain, or look at Beech Mountain back this way. All the hemlocks in this whole area are regrowing. They look beautiful. They've been regrowing for about 5 years. Go on to the next slide. So, we knew that they could establish, are they having an impact locally? They're having a great impact locally. Last year I collected 22,000 of them locally for the Forest Service, and I gave 90% of them to the Forest Service just to prove that this worked. I kept, giving them beetles and giving them beetles and giving them beetles, and they kept going, oh, this might be an exception, and you're so passionate that we're not sure if we can trust you because you're kind of crazy. And I am, but I'm crazy in a good way, okay? I'm crazy for hemlocks. So we went out and did all this crazy baseline measurement. Let's not worry about that now. That's not stuff. Okay, but here's what you want to look at. Okay, so here is a tree that's had dieback. Okay, so you can take these trees now. You can take the trees up where we are, and you can read these trees. You can flip a limb over and look at it, and you can tell where it died, where it regrew. Okay, because what we would have happen is this thing would die, the beetles would come in, and then all of a sudden there'd be a bud here. And it would grow out. That'd be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, because I can count the bud scales. So we've had 6 years of regrowth now. It's beautiful. Oh, I did it again, didn't I? Here. Okay. Let me put this back in. I guess it really doesn't matter, does it? But maybe it does. Okay, go next. All right, so here's a big tree. We put 30 beetles on that tree. That tree's dead. It's a game of numbers. You'd need probably 400 or 500 beetles to make that tree alive. But at first we didn't know that. We didn't know anything. We didn't even know if this beetle would establish, okay? So, here's one of our first release sites. We can go, let's just go on ahead and go through this. Let me see, blah, blah, blah. We got establishment. Okay, this is what I want to show you. Here's a Laricobius egg. Here's your Hemlock woolly adelgid eggs in an ovisac. So this egg is 4 times bigger and yellow, so you can easily see it. When you dissect an ovisac apart, you can see these things. Go to the next slide. Here's this cute little lovable, looks like a little ladybug larvae, and this baby eats 200 to 250 eggs. Okay, so it's going to eat all the eggs in one ovisac and go to another one and feed on it, and they're not real fastidious. They don't eat every egg in an ovisac. Once they get going, they're kind of like the ghosts on Ghostbusters where they're just eating hot dogs, yeah, or whatever. They just go crazy, and they bust out of one ovisac and go to the other. Go next. All right, here's predation rates. Suffice it to say, we're getting the same kind of predation rates that we got. This is back in 2007, and so we're 5 years later, and I haven't updated this, but we're getting about 95% predation. Okay. More geek stuff, more geek stuff. Okay. These are the first 5 trees that we released on. Here's tree number 1, tree number 2, tree number 3, tree number 4, and then tree number 5 is on down. All these trees are alive, and one of the reasons that they're alive too is you've got to have sufficient sunlight, because if these trees are in shade and they die down and they're in triple canopy, it's going to take them years, if ever, to come back. But trees on the edge that have sun and beetles will recover quickly, and that's one of the things that we're seeing now up in Banner Elk. Okay. So now we don't need to look at all these. This is me going through all this data, blah, 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 blah. Bracketing, look, you guys. So here's these principles that I started talking to foresters about, that they're like, what? And I'm like, okay, comes from farmscaping in my organic farm experience, transferring it over to forestry, and it worked, okay? So every release number down to 75, actually down to 50 beetles has taken that I have ever made a release of. Every one, 100% if you do it right, okay? So that really works great. So the other thing that I'll tell you is that, okay, here's your winter predator. These were the Japanese. This is Chinese and this is Japanese predators. And so, you know, that part of it we're still working on. I think I might have a picture. Look at these guys, okay? Sasage's been released. This was the first thing that was released. And you could raise millions of it, but it only attacks the summer generation of the adelgid, and the winter one, which comes out now and is active till May, is what kills the trees. So this one was okay, and it works pretty good, but you've got to have that Laricobius. The beetle that I discovered, or that I helped to discover, in the Pacific Northwest was a golden black beetle, didn't have those dots there. But because I had worked with Dr. Montgomery on this one, I learned the summer predators, and then I was able to go to Seattle and say, we got summer predators here, okay? And yeah, that's just the other thing. So what we did too, we would take those summer predators and put 2 to 5 of them in a bag, count how many ovisacs are in there, wait till they've gone through a generation and bring them back, and we get a 10-fold reduction in ovisacs, okay? Yeah, we don't need, that's, so. We're doing the field collection. We're at the point now where we're operational in North Carolina, and it's really very exciting now because the Forest Service has understood and seen that this works. And so they're putting more and more resources our way to distribute this beetle. In fact, yesterday I released 2,000 of these beetles in New River Gorge. I drove 8 hours yesterday. So, So here's how I would do it. I would put them in these little cartons. Depending on, if they were going into a quarantine lab, I'd just leave them on food because they could do it that way. If they were going out into the field, I'd put them on Spanish moss so we didn't transport anything that was on nose needles. And then put filter paper with water and also a little ladybug diet. And they don't die. I mean, you can leave them in there for almost a week. I think they end up getting depressed because they don't see sun, you know. But anyway, so we're able to collect thousands and thousands and thousands of these. Go on. So here's how I would ship them. I would end up going and getting cup of noodles, and the flavor here is Laricobius flavor. I changed it to Laricobius flavor and put it back on there. And so then what we would do, and I'll tell you guys back, this is right after 9/11. Or, you know, pretty soon afterwards, and if you ship stuff, people were really particular. So David is with me, and I said, we're going to go into FedEx, and I want you to keep your mouth shut and listen to what I say. So I go in, they say, is this a lot, or is there anything living in here? And I say, no, they're dead insect specimens. Okay, we'll ship them. And they asked me a bunch of other weird questions trying to catch me, and then when we walked out, Dave went, oh my God, I never would have been able to mail those things. And I said, that's because for us to do some of the things that we've had to do, we have to bend the system slightly, all right? So, you know, we made the releases. You know, listen, we've got establishment, you guys, it's 8 miles in every direction now. That's, you know, and here's, look, here, this is what I was gonna try to. Now I'm up to, I did 27,500 beetles, and Pat would always go, we need 100,000, we need more than 100,000. So Pat, this year, I'm gonna try, I don't know if I'll make it, but teamwork, exactly, right. We need to get these these Sustainable Development students to help me collect this stuff.
You spent, what, about half an hour teaching me how to do it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I showed him and hit an umbrella, and he went up to Mountain Air, and he hit the spot where he put beetles out and found beetles right off the bat. And that makes perfect sense.
Teach how to do it half the day, and by the end of the day, we had 50 beetles.
Boom.
I found the first one of the day. You know, he showed me
right.
how to do it, but just went from there.
Okay.
I can do this.
That's enough on this. Anyway, so long story short, you guys, we really did, and based on the trees, we really did, you know, us little hillbillies, I didn't even know what a hemlock was 12 years ago. I knew it was a tree, and I knew that there was a poison hemlock. So the only other thing, if you want to go to Dr. McBug real quick, I'll just show people the resources for, I have a picture of every bug that we saw today.